The Godzilla franchise has gone through many, many iterations. It's gone from good to bad to pretty good to okay, but regardless, it's always been entertaining. Well, not always, but we're not going to talk about that right now. We're going to talk about how Godzilla started, and it started all the way back in the year 1954 with the first film simply titled Godzilla. This now 66-year-old film about a legendary monster trying to destroy Japan kicked off a legendary franchise, one of the most legendary in the history of movies. And while there are times in this movie where it definitely shows its age, like it's pretty obvious that some of these buildings being destroyed are very obviously just little models, for a 66-year-old movie, it actually holds up incredibly well. If you can release a movie in 1954 that spawned such an incredible franchise that movies are still being released in 2020, then you know you did something right. Much like when we were talking about with Iron Man in the MCU, if this movie had not been good, if it had just been, shit and nobody cared, well then that was probably it. There would have never been a whole franchise, this would have just been known as a one-and-done flop movie. Obviously, not every movie's been well received. There's been a couple controversies, from Son of Godzilla to Godzilla 1998 to arguably the newer ones. But regardless of all of that, you can't deny that the majority of the franchise had to have been pretty good to have lasted this long. But there comes the question, was there ever a Godzilla movie better than this? Is it possible that the first movie, released in 1954, was the peak of the franchise? Well, depending on who you ask, the answer to that might be yes. There are a lot who believe that this movie, despite being released 66 years ago, has never ever been topped by any of its sequels. And to be honest, I don't know if I can think of any movie that might be better than this. Well, there is one that stands out in my mind, but we're a long way from getting to that. Now, I want to assure everyone, I did not watch the Americanized version Godzilla King of the Monsters. I watched the original. I watched it subbed, so obviously I could understand what they were hearing, but this is where we are going to go back to. We're going to see where it all started, how this 36-film franchise kicked off. Today, we're going to be looking back at Godzilla 1954. So this movie introduces us to Godzilla's powers almost immediately. We start with a fishing boat. They're just, dancing, singing, hanging out, having a good time. Then suddenly, a flash of light comes and they are completely destroyed and blown out of the water by some unknown force. We then get introduced to the main character, well, outside of Godzilla, of course, Hideto Ogata, who gets called into work due to the boats being destroyed and has to break off his date with his fiancée, Emiko. Ogata works for the Japanese Coast Guard, who send another boat to investigate the crash. Shockingly, though, the investigation boat meets the same fate. The villagers begin to spectate what could be causing this until a fishing boat washes up at sea with one survivor. Before he passes out, he mentions that he saw a monster. Turns out that fisherman wasn't the only one who had bad luck, though, as there are no more fish, and a village elder suspects that it must be the work of a legendary monster by the name of Godzilla. The village then performs some sort of exorcism ritual to make Godzilla fuck off. Did it work? Haha, you bet your ass it didn't, as Godzilla stomps through the town that night and destroys 17 houses, killing 9 people. The Japanese government then decides to send some villagers to Tokyo to get disaster relief. They send Emiko's father, Professor Yamane, to lead the investigation on the island, and they end up finding radioactive footprints as well as a trilobite. A trilobite, of course, is an ancient creature that's been extinct for billions of years, but somehow it exists here because of the radiation. Also, the village's entire water supply is damaged with radiation as well, so they're probably screwed. Suddenly, the village alarm bell rings and signaling that the monster is coming out of the mountain. The villagers, being incredibly smart, decide to race up the mountain to see what it is. They quickly turn the fuck back around, though, when Godzilla reveals himself to be a giant-ass dinosaur. Yamane presents his findings to the Japanese government and concludes that Godzilla is an ancient terrestrial sea creature who has been disturbed and awakened and also enhanced by hydrogen bomb testing and radiation. Everyone believes him, mostly because he has a picture of it, but then a giant debate ensues on whether to release the information to the public or not. Meanwhile, though, in the sea, Godzilla gets bored, I guess, and decides to destroy 17 more ships. The government, being incredibly smart, decided to send 10 more ships out there to launch a depth charge attack, because that totally won't piss him off more. Yamane is incredibly distraught at this, though, as he does not want Godzilla killed. He instead wants Godzilla captured so that he can be studied. This was my one problem with Yamane, by the way. I mean, yeah, I can understand wanting to capture him and studying him, especially where he's come from, but you got any ideas on how to do that? How the hell are you going to capture Godzilla? Easier said than done. But I mean, obviously this charge attack's gonna work, though. He's gonna die. No, he's not. Godzilla's right there. He's just chilling. The government then appeals to Yamane for ways to kill Godzilla, but Yamane insists that it's impossible, considering Godzilla already survived hydrogen bombs, which, fair enough. And he also insists that Godzilla must be studied. But again, good luck capturing it. Meanwhile, we get some human plot, and Miko wants to break off her engagement. To Ogata? No, she's not engaged to Ogata. She's engaged to an eye patch wearing doctor named Serizawa, and she wants to break it off with Serizawa so she can get engaged to Ogata. And Miko goes to Serizawa's house and he decides to show her the experiment he's been working on. They don't show exactly what it is, but whatever it is, it terrifies the hell out of her. He makes her swear to tell nobody about it, she agrees, and completely forgets what she was there to do and doesn't even break off the engagement. So, good job, Miko. Meanwhile, at the Legion of Doom, Godzilla's back again for another party. They decide to fire some guns at Godzilla, which obviously doesn't fucking work, and Godzilla decides to fuck up a train because he feels like it. But the Japanese Coast Guard says, screw it, on to the next idea, guns didn't work, okay, let's build a 30-meter tall, 50,000 volt electrified fence along the coast and just hope he runs into it. I don't know if there was a time jump or something, by the way, but they built that thing really freaking fast. Meanwhile, even though Omika's technically still engaged to Serizawa, Ogata decides it's a good time to ask Professor Yamane if he can marry his daughter. He picked a pretty bad time though, as Yamane comes home depressed that they're still trying to kill Godzilla even though studying him, but again, how the hell are they going to study him? Ogata disagrees with the professor and says it's probably a good idea to get rid of Godzilla. Yamane, of course, is not able to take any conflicting opinions and tells Okada to leave and never comes back. So yeah, about that proposal, bud, it didn't go too well. Meanwhile, Godzilla comes out of the ocean again, conveniently runs right into the giant electrified fence. And actually, hey, it looks like it's working. Oh my god, he has atomic breath. Godzilla feels slighted by this though and decides to destroy everything in sight. He takes his sweet ass time doing it too, as this literally goes on for 15 minutes. It's just 15 minutes of Godzilla destroying shit, and it's pretty awesome. Godzilla eventually just gets bored again, I imagine, goes back into the ocean, and the village tries to recover from the damage done, but he destroyed pretty much everything, so good luck with that. Knowing that they're out of options, Miko decides to cave and tell Ogata what Serizawa was working on. Turns out Serizawa has been working on an oxygen destroyer, which of course destroys all the oxygen atoms in the water and causes whatever was in the water to die immediately. Knowing that this is probably Japan's last frickin' chance, Ogata and Miko travel to Serizawa and try to convince him to let them use the oxygen destroyer. Serizawa is not having any of this. He then runs down to his lab and tries to destroy his notes, but in the ensuing scuttle with Ogata, ends up knocking him the fuck out and busting his head open. Things calm down and Serizawa gives his reasons for not using it, which are actually pretty good ones, that if he uses this, everybody's gonna want one, and then this is gonna provide World War III, which, you know, fair enough. Ogata also makes the good point, though, that if they don't use this, Godzilla's gonna destroy all of Japan, so that's pretty bad too. I don't know what rock Serizawa's been living under, but apparently he did not know the depth of the damage caused by Godzilla. He sees it though, on a news report, which is enough to convince him to use the oxygen destroyer. Serizawa needs to take precautions though and ends up burning his notes, after which Miko has an emotional breakdown for some reason. The main cast all go out in a boat to look for Godzilla. Once they've located him, Serizawa tries to convince the others that he must go do this alone, but Ogata convinces him to let him go with him. They go underwater with the oxygen destroyer, but where the hell is Godzilla? This is entire oh no, he's right there, he's just chilling. After Godzilla spots them, Ogata goes back up, but Serizawa stays down. Serizawa activates the oxygen destroyer, and guess what? It works, and Godzilla slowly starts dying. Then, in a final act of badassness, Serizawa sacrifices himself, making sure that he takes his plans to the grave. Godzilla tries to rise above the water, lets out one final roar before falling under the water and completely evaporates. The movie ends on somewhat of a somber note with them mourning Serizawa's death, and the professor prophesizes that if there is more nuclear weapons testing, another Godzilla may rise in the future. And, I mean, this is the first movie of a 36 film franchise, so yeah, obviously he was right. So obviously it's not often that movies this old hold up this well, but despite some parts where it shows its age, this movie is still incredibly entertaining even in the year 2020. If you want to get into the Godzilla franchise, you should definitely start at the beginning, because it still holds up incredibly well. And no, don't watch the Americanized 56 version, even if you prefer dubbed over subbed, trust me, it's worth it in this point. Not only did this film kick off the longest running film franchise in history, but it also kicked off a brand new part of Japanese media. Without Godzilla, none of the kaiju or any of this would have happened. But of course, like I said at the beginning, it was all concurrent on this movie being good. If this movie had flopped, if it had just been uninteresting, if nobody had cared, we never would have gotten any of this. But now we have to pose the question, was this the greatest Godzilla film? Well, we don't really know the answer yet, but we're going to figure it out, because of course this is just the beginning. We are going to be going through this entire 36 film franchise. It's going to take me forever, but we're going to get there eventually. You're probably thinking, well, considering the success of the first one, they probably took their time, right, and really decided to work hard on the second movie. Haha, nah! They pumped out another movie 6 months later. Yeah, I said 6 months later. They capitalized on this immediately. They didn't wait for nothing. They're like, nope, new Godzilla, need it right now, pump it out. And it wasn't as good. It was still okay, though, but we'll get to it. I'm not going to show it to you quite yet, but there's something you're going to get introduced to in the Incredible Hulk review and the Godzilla Raids Again reviews, and that is our big boards. That's right, we are going to be making big boards and ranking every single film in both the MCU and the Godzilla franchise. You thought I was just reviewing them. No, we're doing rankings too. And much like with Iron Man, this film is going to stay number 1 for a bit. Spoiler alert. Will it stay number 1 forever? That is a possibility. But again, there is something. There might just be something that is a little bit better. But we're a long, long ways off from that, and we will now focus on Godzilla Raids Again, which again was made 6 months later. But that is it for me today. I hope you guys enjoyed my review of Godzilla 1954. I will be coming out with my MCU review of The Incredible Hulk on February 20th. There is not currently a date for Godzilla Raids Again, but it will either be at the end of February or the beginning of March. I hope you guys enjoyed this. My name is Noah Taff. If you want to follow any of my social media links, they are down in the description. Thank you to all 36 of my Patrons for supporting me, my channel, and my projects. I appreciate you guys. I will see you guys next time. Bye.